The wind was howling. It was, I don't know, 42 degrees. And I was just like, okay, this in a nutshell is what Portland feels like, whether or not it's 75 degrees and the sun is shining, or whether or not it is pouring down rain and the wind is howling, because it is such a filthy dump that there's no way that you see any of the beauty that made Portland the city that it is. As I've talked about many times here, there is a, I fly down into Nashville, and there is a in Nashville and Tennessee in the South, down in Florida. I've been down into Alabama. I've been up into Kentucky. There is a freedom down here that you feel when you land. There is a personality trait here. There is a friendliness here. Yesterday, as an example, I'm in Franklin, and they do this Christmas story, or excuse me, Christmas Carol. Scrooge and Bob Cratchit and all of these characters are out walking around the whole downtown, which is about 2 blocks long. It's very old here. It gets all done up like it is circa, 1750 Victorian London. And there must have been 30,000 people out, all my neighbors, the whole town for damn near.
Yeah.
And they're selling food and kind of period correct stuff and donuts and kids things, and it's snowing because they're making snow, even though it was, 55 degrees and sunshiny. They extended it for a few hours on either side because it was supposed to be Saturday and Sunday, but of course you had the remnants of that tornado, so it was pouring down rain and the wind was howling, so they got rid of it for that. I mean, they had it go on, but so they extended it out. But there's no garbage. There's no homeless, no tents. There's no human feces on the ground. I've yet to see a syringe since I have moved to Tennessee. Something that you would see quite regularly if you paid close attention in Portland. Again, no tents. So there's nobody. And when I say tents, I don't know that people that listen to the podcast here understand when I say tents what I'm talking about. I think maybe, and just to be clear for everybody, I was sitting on a park bench yesterday talking to some people who had moved from Northern Virginia, and they had, for the same reasons, Northern Virginia had become so political and so crazy that they had to get out. They finally retired, and they found their way to Franklin, Tennessee, which they called the same thing as I do. They're like, we found home as soon as we moved here. And we both said the same thing about why we're here. What they didn't realize, though, they love Portland, they love the Northwest. They didn't realize how really bad it is, because there's nobody putting anything out there on a massive scale about how terrible these cities are. You don't have the NBC nightly news out there doing stories about how some of the biggest cities in the nation look like third world countries. Any listener to this podcast knows that is something that I have talked about many, many, many times, having traveled the world the way that I have. Portland, Oregon is one of the ugliest cities that I have ever seen. It's one of the ugliest cities that I have ever been in. Now, you can love the 2 gigantic rivers that come through the middle of it. Great. That's beautiful. You can love Mount Hood off in the distance. Great. That's beautiful too. You can love driving the hour and a half and it gets you to the beach, and great. That's beautiful also. You can love the 2.5 hour drive that takes you to the desert, and great. That's beautiful also. And then, like I said, you want to go skiing, you can go in 3 different directions to ski some of the time year round, and great. That's beautiful. But the city, in and of itself, the city that you interact with, it's not when you go to the mountain that 1 time a year or that 2 times a year that you might go to the mountain or the beach. It's the 500 times that you got to go to the Costco, park the car and get out, and all of the garbage goes flying past you, or you have to go by all of the homeless. And the homeless, let's get this straight, homeless it's not because they can't find a home homeless. They call them homeless. It's not even a good term to use because it's not accurate. It's one they use to snow us over with. What reality is these are mentally impaired human beings who need help, or drug fiends. One or the other. They're either drug addicts or they are mentally, they have something the matter with them. And in both cases, they should be helped. But the ridiculous morons that run that city that run San Francisco, that run Seattle, that run Los Angeles believe that there should be housing given to these people. So instead of finding them dead on the street, they find them dead in the house, dead in the apartment, dead in the hotel room. And that is the way that they run it. So when you go to Portland and you come from somewhere like Tennessee, like I do, and you land in Portland, and sometimes it's more movie making. You couldn't write it if you wanted to. I will get, like in this last trip, Billy picks me up at the airport. I get on the airplane at 70 degrees in Tennessee and bright blue sky. And I land in Portland, and as Billy will tell you, it's pouring down rain. I mean, the rain's just going sideways. God knows, it looked like rain that you see in movies. You know, the rain kind of goes in sheets. Mm-hmm. That's how it was raining in Portland. The wind was howling. It was, 42 degrees. And I was just like, okay, this in a nutshell is what Portland feels like, whether or not it's 75 degrees and the sun is shining, or whether or not it is pouring down rain and the wind is howling, because it is such a filthy dump that there's no way that you see any of the beauty that made Portland the city that it is. And I'm going to add more to it. As I traveled around the city, we played pool in a couple of small bars. One particularly in Southeast Portland. It's old school Southeast Portland, been around a long time. Used to be poor. That's where my best friend grew up, and just every bit as poor as I was. But over the years, it's gentrified. It's closer to the city now, and so the houses are $500,000 and $600,000 and $700,000. And these houses are 100 years old, 90, 80 years old. I mean, this is old Portland, original. It's called the Selwood District. So as it continues to come up, obviously, it pushes all of the people out, like I said, as it gentrifies. So as I'm driving out there, and you have to drive through all of these neighborhoods to get to this little bar that we were playing pool at, and I was struck, having just landed from Franklin, Tennessee, and Nashville, Tennessee, where there is a light on damn near every other building, damn near every other house. Every single block has lights. You know, not every single house has lights, but there's lights everywhere you go. You're going to see, I should say, Christmas lights. There's Christmas lights everywhere you go. And as I drove out, and Billy, you probably did the same thing. I don't know if you noticed it the same way. You're quite sensitive to it as I am. But as I was driving out, there's dark as hell. Yep. There's no Christmas lights in and around that bar. Is a million houses, and there's no Christmas lights, because I think the whole city's so upside down and so liberal and so crazy and so nuts and so politically correct and so culturally deficient. Everybody's kind of following the same mantra and the same rules and the ones that they make up that have made that city such the dump that it is, that they don't even have the decency to put up Christmas lights to make it all feel better, to improve as you drive down the street and you have to pass the sidewalk of garbage and human feces and like I said, syringes and the tents and the human beings that you're having to move around. Nobody even thinks, hey, you know what we should do? We should put up some Christmas lights. In the cold and the wet and the dark and the misery that all of the people who have to live there and all of the people who are living on the streets have to endure. Let's do our part for that one part of the year that you can bring joy to people simply by putting lights up on your house.
Yep.